The air was cool that morning, a soft mist hanging over the street as I walked up the path to my son's house, casserole dish warm in my hands, the towel wrapped around it damp from the dew. The garden was wild, grass curling over the stones, and the porch creaked under my feet, the sound sharp in the quiet. I paused, heart fluttering, when I saw my husband's car parked at the curb, its blue paint streaked with dust, windshield fogged from the night. He was supposed to be at work, not here, not on a day like this, and something inside me tightened, a cold knot of worry I tried to ignore. The faint sound of laughter drifted through the open window, mixing with the gentle patter of rain on the glass, and I moved quietly, careful not to let the screen door slam, my breath shallow as I pressed my ear to the frame. Inside, the living room glowed with warm light, the scent of coffee and cinnamon rolls filling the air, but what I saw made my knees weak. My husband sitting close beside Lila on the old couch, his hand resting on her knee, their heads bent together over a stack of papers, voices low and secret. My son was nowhere in sight, and the way they looked at each other, like they shared something private, sent a wave of nausea through me. I remembered the first time I met Lila, how she smiled so sweetly, her eyes wide and innocent, her words soft as honey, and how quickly she'd wrapped my son around her finger, making him believe she was the answer to all his prayers. I wanted to trust her, wanted to believe that family meant as much to her as it did to me, but there had always been little things. Missing money from the joint account, whispered phone calls late at night, the way she bristled when I offered advice, her quick temper hidden behind a mask of politeness. My husband, always so steady and reliable, had started coming home late, his excuses thin and unconvincing, his eyes darting away from mine when I asked where he'd been. I tried to ignore the signs, telling myself I was imagining things, that I was just lonely since my son moved out, but now, standing in the shadow of that doorway, I saw the truth laid bare. The clock on the mantel ticked loudly, each second stretching out as I watched Lila lean in, her hand brushing my husband's arm, her laughter soft and musical, the sound of betrayal ringing in my ears. I thought of all the times I'd defended her, all the dinners I'd cooked, the gifts I'd given, the way I tried to welcome her into our family, only to be met with cold smiles and empty promises. The room felt smaller, the air thick with secrets, and I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling the rough fabric of my coat, the steady thump of my heart, the sting of tears I refused to let fall. I remembered the day my son brought Lila home, how proud he'd been, how he'd looked at her like she was the sun itself, and how I'd wanted so badly to believe she was good for him. But now, as I watched her whisper to my husband, her eyes glittering with something sharp and calculating, I knew I'd been blind. The rain picked up, drumming harder against the window, and I stepped back, the cold seeping into my bones, the casserole dish heavy in my hands. I thought of all the sacrifices I'd made, the years I'd spent building a home, raising a family, trusting the people I loved, only to be cast aside like an old coat. My mind raced, piecing together every strange moment, every lie, every time my husband and Lila had exchanged glances when they thought I wasn't looking. The betrayal was sharp, a knife twisting in my gut, but beneath the pain something else stirred. A quiet, steady resolve, the kind that comes from years of surviving storms. I would not let them destroy what I had built, would not let their greed and selfishness tear my family apart. I set the casserole down on the porch, the dish clinking softly against the wood, and wiped my hands on my skirt, the fabric rough beneath my fingers. The wind picked up, rattling the windows, and I straightened my shoulders, drawing in a deep breath, the air cool and damp in my lungs. I would not confront them now, not when they were so sure of themselves, so certain I was blind to their schemes. Instead, I would watch, I would listen, I would gather every scrap of evidence, every whispered word, every secret meeting, until I had the truth laid out plain as day. The world outside was gray and cold, but inside me, a fire had started, small but fierce, burning away the fear and doubt, leaving only determination. I turned and walked back down the path, the wet grass brushing against my ankles, the sound of my footsteps lost in the storm. I would not be their victim. I would be their reckoning. And if you want to know how I got my justice, you'll want to hear the rest of this story. The next morning, the sun barely peeked through the clouds, casting a pale light across my kitchen as I sat at the old wooden table, the surface cool beneath my hands, the faint ticking of the clock filling the silence. My mind replayed every detail from the day before, each glance and whisper between Lila and my husband echoing in my memory, fueling a quiet determination that settled deep in my bones. I poured myself a cup of coffee, the steam curling up and warming my face, and stared at the faded photograph of my family on the wall, searching for answers in the smiles that once seemed so genuine. The house felt emptier than ever, shadows stretching across the floor, the hum of the refrigerator the only sign of life. I knew I needed proof, something solid that would reveal the truth behind their secret meetings and hidden smiles, so I began to search, starting with the small metal box my husband kept in the closet, its lock old and rusted, the key hidden in the pocket of his winter coat. My hands shook as I opened it, the hinges creaking softly, and inside I found a stack of envelopes, each one addressed to Lila in my husband's careful handwriting, the dates recent, the words inside full of promises and plans that did not include me or my son. My heart pounded as I read, the betrayal growing heavier with every line, but I pressed on, determined to uncover every secret they thought they could hide. I moved to the desk in the study, the drawers cluttered with old receipts and forgotten bills, and there, tucked between two folders, I found a bank statement with a name I didn't recognize, the balance far larger than anything in our joint account. The numbers blurred before my eyes, but I forced myself to focus, piecing together the transfers and withdrawals, the pattern clear as day. Money was being siphoned away, hidden from me, and funneled into an account that only Lila and my husband could access. The air in the room felt heavy, the weight of their deception pressing down on me, but I refused to let it break me. I gathered every document, every letter, every scrap of evidence, and placed them in a folder, the edges sharp against my fingers, the paper cool and smooth. The next step was harder, but I knew I needed help, someone who could guide me through the maze of lies and legalities, so I called Mrs. Carter, the lawyer who had helped me settle my mother's estate years ago, her voice calm and steady on the other end of the line. We met in her office that afternoon, the air inside crisp and clean, the scent of lemon polish lingering in the corners, the sound of her pen scratching across her notepad as I explained everything I had discovered. She listened without interrupting, her eyes kind but sharp, and when I finished she nodded, her words measured and reassuring as she laid out a plan to protect myself and my son. She explained the importance of gathering more evidence, of documenting every interaction, every suspicious transaction, and advised me to install a small recording device in the living room, hidden beneath the cushion of the old armchair where Lila and my husband liked to sit. The idea made my stomach twist, but I knew it was necessary, so I purchased the device that evening, the package small and unassuming, the instructions simple enough for my tired hands to follow. The next day, I returned to my son's house under the pretense of bringing over some fresh bread, the air outside brisk and clear, the leaves rustling in the wind as I walked up the path, my heart beating fast in my chest. Lila greeted me at the door, her smile tight and forced, her eyes flickering with something I couldn't quite name, but I kept my own expression calm, my voice steady as I handed her the bread and made small talk about the weather. While she busied herself in the kitchen, I slipped into the living room, the carpet soft beneath my feet, the faint scent of lavender in the air, and quickly placed the recorder beneath the cushion, my hands steady despite the fear gnawing at my insides. I left soon after, the tension in the house thick enough to choke on, but I felt a small spark of hope as I walked back to my car, the sky above a deep, endless blue. Over the next week I returned several times, always with a reason. A pie, a bag of groceries, a forgotten scarf. Each visit an opportunity to check the device, to swap out the memory card and listen to the conversations that unfolded when they thought no one was listening. The recordings were damning, filled with whispered plans and cruel laughter, their voices cold and calculating as they discussed how to move the money, how to keep my son in the dark, how to make sure I never found out. I documented everything, filling page after page in my notebook, the ink smudging beneath my fingers, my resolve growing stronger with every word. Mrs. Carter helped me organize the evidence, her office a sanctuary of order and calm, the files neatly stacked on her desk, the sound of her printer humming in the background as she prepared the documents we would need for the coming battle. We discussed strategy late into the evening, the lamp casting a warm glow over the room, the air thick with anticipation and fear, but also with hope. I knew the road ahead would be hard, that the people I loved most had turned against me, but I refused to let their betrayal define me. I would fight for my family, for my son, for the life I had built with my own two hands. The storm outside had passed, the sky now clear and bright, but inside me, a new storm was brewing, fierce and unyielding. I was ready. The day I chose to make my first move, the air was thick with humidity, the sky heavy and low, as if the world itself was holding its breath, and I felt the weight of what I was about to do pressing down on my shoulders. I arrived at my son's house just as the sun slipped behind a bank of clouds, the light in the living room dim and uncertain, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only sound as I stepped inside, my heart pounding with a mixture of dread and resolve. Lila was there, perched on the edge of the sofa, her phone in hand, her eyes darting up in surprise when she saw me, her smile brittle and forced, while my husband sat across from her, his face unreadable, the tension between them almost visible in the air. I set my purse down on the table, the rough wood cool beneath my fingers, and took a slow breath, steadying myself as I looked from one to the other, my voice calm but firm as I asked if we could talk. The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the distant sound of a car passing outside, and I watched as Lila's fingers tightened around her phone, her knuckles white, her gaze flickering to my husband, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single envelope, the paper crisp and white, and placed it on the table between us, the sound sharp in the quiet room. "I found this," I said softly, my eyes never leaving theirs, and I saw the color drain from Lila's face, her lips parting in shock as she realized what it was. My husband's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing, but he said nothing, the silence stretching out until it felt like the walls themselves were closing in. I opened the envelope and slid out one of the letters he had written to Lila, the words clear and unmistakable, and read a short passage aloud, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. Lila's composure cracked, her eyes darting wildly, her breath coming in short, sharp bursts, while my husband looked away, his face flushed with anger and shame. I let the silence linger, the tension building, before I calmly placed the letter back in the envelope and set it aside, my gaze unwavering as I told them I knew about the secret account, the missing money, the plans they had made behind my back. Lila tried to protest, her voice high and desperate, but I cut her off with a single look, the kind that comes from years of holding a family together through storms and heartbreak. My husband's hand shook as he reached for his glass, the ice clinking against the sides, his eyes refusing to meet mine, and I felt a strange sense of power settle over me, quiet and unyielding. I told them I had more, recordings, bank statements, every detail of their betrayal laid out in black and white, and that I was prepared to take everything to the authorities if they did not come clean. The room was silent except for the ticking of the clock, each second a reminder of how much had changed, how far we had all fallen. Lila's mask slipped completely, her voice turning cold and sharp as she accused me of spying, of trying to ruin her life, but I stood my ground, my voice low and steady as I reminded her that she had brought this on herself. My husband finally spoke, his words bitter and defensive, blaming me for driving him away, for making him feel small and unimportant, but I refused to let his anger shake me. I told him I had loved him, trusted him, built a life with him, and that his choices had broken something that could never be repaired. The argument grew heated, voices rising and falling, accusations flying like arrows, but I remained calm, my resolve unbroken, my eyes fixed on the truth I had uncovered. My son arrived home in the middle of it all, the door slamming behind him, his face pale with confusion and fear as he took in the scene before him. I turned to him, my voice gentle but firm, and told him everything, laying out the facts with a clarity that left no room for doubt. He listened in stunned silence, his hands trembling at his sides, the pain in his eyes cutting deeper than any words ever could. Lila tried to pull him to her side, her voice pleading and sweet, but he stepped back, his trust in her shattered by the evidence I had gathered. My husband tried to defend himself, his words stumbling and weak, but the truth was too heavy, too undeniable, and the walls he had built around his lies began to crumble. The confrontation left the house in chaos, the air thick with anger and betrayal, but I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me, a quiet certainty that I had done what needed to be done. The days that followed were tense, the family divided, whispers and rumors spreading through the community as the truth began to surface. Some believed Lila's lies, others stood by me, But I held my head high, my dignity intact, knowing that I had faced the storm and refused to be swept away. The battle was far from over, but I was no longer afraid. I had found my strength, and I would see this through to the end. The day of the family meeting arrived with a chill in the air, the sky outside a pale, washed-out blue, and the living room filled slowly with the people who had once meant everything to me, their voices hushed, their eyes wary as they took their seats on the worn couches and chairs. The faint scent of lemon polish lingered in the corners, mingling with the nervous energy that seemed to crackle in the space between us, while the old grandfather clock ticked steadily, marking the moments before everything would change. My son sat beside me, his face drawn and pale, his hands clenched tightly in his lap, while Lila perched on the edge of her seat, her posture stiff, her eyes darting from face to face as if searching for an escape. My husband stood by the window, his back to the room, shoulders hunched as he stared out at the bare branches swaying in the wind, the silence between us heavy and unspoken. I took a deep breath, the air cool and dry in my lungs, and stood, the floor creaking beneath my feet as I moved to the center of the room, every eye turning to me, the weight of their expectations pressing down on my shoulders. I began by thanking everyone for coming, my voice steady but soft, the words simple and clear. And then I told them that I had something important to share, something that would affect us all. The room grew still, the only sound the faint hum of the heater and the distant barking of a neighbor's dog. As I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder I had prepared, the edges worn from days of handling, the contents inside carefully organized and labeled. I laid the folder on the coffee table, the sound echoing in the quiet, and opened it, revealing the stack of letters, bank statements, and printed transcripts of the recordings I had collected. My hands did not tremble as I picked up the first letter, my eyes meeting Lila's across the room, her face draining of color as she realized what was about to happen. I read aloud, my voice unwavering, the words of betrayal and deceit filling the room, each sentence a blow that left no doubt about the truth. My husband turned from the window, his face ashen, his mouth opening and closing as if searching for words that would not come, while Lila's composure shattered, her hands shaking as she tried to interrupt, her voice rising in panic and desperation. I held up the bank statements next, pointing out the transfers and withdrawals, the secret account that had siphoned away the money meant for our family, the evidence clear and undeniable. My son stared at the papers, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief, the pain etched deep into his features as he realized the full extent of the betrayal. The room was silent except for the sound of Lila's ragged breathing, her mask slipping completely as she lashed out, accusing me of setting her up, of twisting the truth to suit my own ends, but I stood firm, my dignity unshaken, my resolve stronger than ever. I played the recordings last, the voices of Lila and my husband filling the room, their words cold and calculating, their laughter cruel as they discussed their plans to take everything for themselves. The effect was immediate and devastating. The truth laid bare for all to see, the facade they had built crumbling in an instant, leaving only the raw, ugly reality behind. My husband sank into a chair, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs, while Lila's anger turned to pleading, her voice trembling as she begged for forgiveness, for understanding, for another chance. My son looked at me, his eyes filled with tears, his trust in the people he loved most shattered beyond repair. And I reached out to him, my hand warm and steady on his arm, a silent promise that we would get through this together. The rest of the family sat in stunned silence, their faces pale and drawn, the weight of the revelation settling over them like a heavy blanket, the sound of the clock ticking louder with every passing second. I spoke then, my words measured and calm, explaining how I had discovered the truth, how I had gathered the evidence, how I had fought to protect what was left of our family. I told them that I would not allow myself to be a victim, that I would not let their greed and selfishness destroy everything I had worked so hard to build. The room was quiet as I finished, the only sound the soft rustle of paper as I closed the folder, the finality of the gesture ringing out like a bell. Lila broke down completely, her tears falling unchecked as she realized there was no way out, no lie left to tell, no secret left to hide. My husband sat in silence, his face buried in his hands, the consequences of his actions settling over him like a shroud. My son stood and crossed the room to me, his arms wrapping around my shoulders, his embrace warm and strong, a silent apology for all the pain that had come before. The rest of the family followed, their support quiet but unwavering, their presence a balm to the wounds that had been laid bare. The truth had been revealed, the lies exposed, and though the road ahead would be long and difficult, I knew that we would face it together, our bond stronger for having survived the storm. After the truth came out, the days that followed felt lighter, as if the very air in my home had been cleansed by a long-awaited rain, the sunlight streaming through the windows and warming my face as I sat at the kitchen table, a gentle peace settling over me. My son, though still wounded by the betrayal, began to visit more often, his presence a comfort, his laughter slowly returning as we shared quiet meals and long walks beneath the budding trees. The legal process moved forward, guided by Mrs. Carter's steady hand, her calm voice a constant reassurance as she filed the necessary papers, each document a step toward reclaiming what had been taken from me. Lila and my husband, stripped of their secrets, faced the consequences of their actions in a courtroom filled with the low murmur of voices and the sharp scent of polished wood, the judge's words clear and final as he ruled in my favor. The financial accounts were restored, the stolen money returned, and the house that had once felt like a prison became my sanctuary again, every room echoing with the promise of new beginnings. I found myself waking early, the soft chirping of birds outside my window a gentle reminder that life goes on, the pain of the past slowly fading as I tended to my garden, the earth cool and rich beneath my fingers, each seed planted a symbol of hope. Friends and neighbors, once distant and uncertain, reached out with kind words and warm embraces, their support a balm to my spirit, their faith in me a testament to the strength I had found within myself. My son and I rebuilt our relationship, brick by brick, our conversations honest and open, the wounds between us healing with time and patience, the love we shared growing stronger with every passing day. I joined a community group at the church, the sound of hymns and laughter filling the halls, the warmth of fellowship reminding me that I was never truly alone. The memories of betrayal lingered, sharp and painful at times, but I refused to let them define me, choosing instead to focus on the future, on the life I was creating for myself, one filled with purpose and joy. I redecorated the living room, painting the walls a soft, welcoming yellow, the color bright and cheerful, a reflection of the hope that now filled my heart. The old photographs that once brought tears now made me smile, each image a reminder of the love and resilience that had carried me through the darkest days. I learned to trust myself again, to listen to the quiet wisdom that had always guided me, the lessons of patience and dignity shaping every decision I made. My husband moved out, his absence a relief rather than a loss, the silence he left behind filled with the gentle hum of peace. Lila disappeared from our lives, her name rarely spoken, her memory fading like a shadow at dusk, the damage she caused slowly repaired by the steady work of forgiveness and time. I found joy in small things, the taste of fresh bread, the feel of sunlight on my skin, the laughter of children playing in the yard, each moment a gift to be cherished. The legal victory brought not only financial security but also a sense of justice, a validation of the strength and courage it had taken to stand up for myself and my family. I used some of the recovered money to start a scholarship fund in my mother's name, a way to honor her memory and give back to the community that had supported me through my trials. The gratitude I felt was deep and abiding, a wellspring of hope that nourished me even on the hardest days. My son began to heal, his trust in others slowly returning, his heart open once more to the possibility of love and happiness. We celebrated birthdays and holidays together, the house filled with music and laughter, the wounds of the past replaced by the promise of a brighter tomorrow. I found strength in my faith, the quiet moments of prayer and reflection grounding me, reminding me that I was never truly alone, that I had the power to shape my own destiny. The transformation was not sudden, but gradual, each day a step toward wholeness, each victory a testament to the resilience that had carried me through. I forgave my husband not for his sake, but for my own, releasing the bitterness that had threatened to consume me, choosing instead to embrace the peace that comes with letting go. The garden flourished under my care, the flowers blooming in vibrant colors, the air filled with the sweet scent of new beginnings. I looked in the mirror and saw not a victim, but a survivor, a woman who had faced the storm and emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to live her life on her own terms. The journey had been long and difficult, but I would not trade it for anything, for it had taught me the true meaning of strength, of love, and of hope. Now, as I sit by the window in the gentle light of the late afternoon, the world outside calm and golden, I find myself reflecting on the journey that brought me here. The lessons carved deep into my heart by pain, patience, and perseverance. The soft rustle of leaves in the breeze reminds me of the many seasons I have weathered, each one shaping me in ways I could never have imagined, each hardship a teacher, each joy a blessing. I remember the cold ache of betrayal, the sting of realizing that those I trusted most could turn against me, and I recall the nights spent awake, listening to the quiet hum of the house, wondering if I would ever feel whole again. Through it all, I learned that dignity is not something others can give or take away. It is a quiet strength that lives within, a steady flame that endures even when the winds of life threaten to snuff it out. I discovered that forgiveness is not about excusing the wrongs done to us, but about freeing ourselves from the chains of anger and bitterness, allowing our hearts to heal and our spirits to soar. The sound of children's laughter drifting in from the yard fills me with hope, a reminder that life continues, that new memories can be made even after old wounds have healed. I have come to understand that true family is not defined by blood alone, but by the bonds we choose to nurture, the love we give freely, and the trust we build through honesty and kindness. The warmth of my son's embrace, the gentle touch of a friend's hand, the shared smiles and quiet conversations, all these moments have become the foundation of my new life, a life built on truth, resilience, and grace. I have learned to trust my instincts, to listen to the small voice inside that warns me when something is wrong, and to stand firm in my convictions, even when the world tries to shake my resolve. The journey from victim to victor was not easy, and there were days when I wanted to give up, to let the darkness swallow me whole, but I held on to the belief that justice would prevail, that goodness would triumph over greed and deceit. The lessons I carry now are simple but profound. Never underestimate your own strength, never allow others to define your worth, and never be afraid to seek help when the burden becomes too heavy to bear alone. The gentle ticking of the clock in the hallway is a comfort, a reminder that time moves forward, that healing is possible, and that every ending is also a beginning. I have found peace in the quiet moments, joy in the simple pleasures, and purpose in helping others who find themselves lost in the storms of life. My story is not just one of betrayal and revenge, but of renewal and hope, a testament to the power of perseverance and the unbreakable spirit that lives within us all. I share my experience not to dwell on the pain, but to offer a hand to those who walk a similar path, to let them know they are not alone, that there is light on the other side of darkness. The garden outside my window is in full bloom, each flower a symbol of resilience, each petal a reminder that beauty can grow from even the harshest soil. I have learned to celebrate my victories, no matter how small, and to forgive myself for the moments of doubt and fear that crept in along the way. The love I have for my family, for my friends, and for myself has become my greatest treasure, a wellspring of strength that carries me through whatever challenges may come. I am grateful for the wisdom gained, for the courage found in the face of adversity, and for the peace that now fills my days. The world is not always kind, and people are not always who they seem, but I have learned that truth has a way of coming to light, that justice, though sometimes slow, will find its way. My hope for anyone listening to my story is that you find the courage to stand up for yourself, to seek the truth even when it is painful, and to believe in your own worth, no matter what others may say or do. The journey may be long, and the road may be rough, but you are stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and more deserving of happiness than you can imagine. As the sun sets and the sky turns to gold, I close my eyes and give thanks for the lessons learned, for the love that remains, and for the future that awaits. My story is not over, and neither is yours. There is always hope, always a chance for a new beginning, always a reason to keep moving forward.